Hey lifers, Dustin here, and we are only 11 Saturdays away from the kickoff of the college football season. Really 10 from the first Saturday, but 11 until every single team is playing, and boy, I can't wait. I kind of decided on June as Conference Realignment Month, where every Saturday I would talk about a different issue pertaining to conference realignment, and today is no exception. I figured this is kind of a long-term video. So this is assuming in the next 20 years, we're going to move to super conferences, right? And in the vein of that, I'm assuming that the current Power 5 conferences that we have will all get to 16 teams apiece. So in this little thought experiment, I figured I would try to project who, if I was the commissioner of each conference, who I would probably get in order to get 16 teams. So for the Big Ten, they get to add 6 teams, while the Pac-12 adds 4. Big Ten, SEC, and ACC only add 2 teams apiece. This is just my take on it, what I'm really interested in, and why I kind of do these videos that, to me, kind of seem ridiculous. Like, I'm just interested in this kind of stuff, and I'll just, find myself daydreaming about it while I'm driving, or, sketching out little lists. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll make a video about it because I want to hear what you guys have to say, who you think each conference should add, and why. So again, this is a little bit of a long distance thing. I don't think any of these, first off, none of these are probably going to happen. Second off, this is assuming that every team in each conference stays in their conference. So nobody leaves from the Big 12 to go to the Pac-16, right? Nobody else leaves the ACC to go to the Big Ten. Things like that. We're going to assume all these teams stay where they are. So all we're doing is inviting new teams into the conferences, not shifting teams from one Power 5 conference to another. And again, this is assuming a long-term view. I'm going to try to take into account everything that a university president would look at, basketball programs, academics, things like that. But this is pretty football heavy, so mostly I'm just going on football. So first things first, I'm just going to kind of go in alphabetical order, and we're going to start with the Atlantic Coast Conference. Now, the ACC currently is sitting at 14 teams and has split it kind of down the middle. There's 2 teams in Florida. One's in the Atlantic, one's in the Coastal. Syracuse and Pitt, one in the Coastal, one in the Atlantic. So, in trying to do that as well, Notre Dame is under contract to join the ACC in football if they decide to ever join another conference within the next 20 years. I don't see that happening, so the ACC will never expand until they get Notre Dame. That's my take on it. They're not going to move forward until they have Notre Dame. If they ever can get Notre Dame, they will go to 16 teams. It's just a matter of who the other team is. So with that in mind, I'm going to put Notre Dame / a team because obviously they'll get Notre Dame if they can. The 2 teams that I have projected them as getting is Navy and UConn. Now, Navy has a storied tradition of football, and they're in a service academy school. Not to get too sentimental, but I think most people would want Navy to be in their conference. They do bring a very good football team, a very good football program with history behind it, some national championships early on. The second team that I'm going to pick is UConn. Now, UConn's academics, kind of surprisingly, considering they're in Connecticut. As a dumb Southerner, I assume that Connecticut's academics would be top-notch because I assume they would have a lot of rich alumni that would give back and that whole thing. But apparently, from everything I've been told, it's not quite like that. And their football team, while they've had some pretty good years, have not been very good recently. But their basketball team, men's and women's, is phenomenal. One of the best, right? They were one of the anchors of the Big East. So, the ACC, always a basketball school, kind of first. UConn would fit right in. And I have Navy joining the Atlantic. So, Navy would play Syracuse and Boston College every year. They would also fill that little hole in Maryland that Maryland left when they went to go join the Big Ten. And UConn or Notre Dame would be in the Coastal. I think Notre Dame would have great rivalries with Pittsburgh and Georgia Tech and Miami and Virginia Tech. And as far as UConn, you got the Pittsburgh in there. You got old Big East teams in Miami and Pittsburgh. And maybe they can ignite some kind of a rivalry with Virginia that Maryland kind of left open when they left to the Big Ten. Next, we're going to move to the Big Ten. Of course, they can only get 2 teams, and I decided to kind of stretch their reach a little bit, put one in the East, one in the West, and both of them I think are kind of surprising. In the East, I'm adding Temple. I know, but, I mean, personally, I would rather have Temple than Rutgers. Temple kind of solidifies the Philadelphia area. People in Philly, even though Temple's not great, people in Philly do love Temple. If you watch the NFL draft, whenever a Temple player got drafted, they all went nuts. People there do like and respect Temple. They will have a natural rivalry with Penn State for the battle for Pennsylvania. And it does give you Philly. There's not a lot of options in Big Ten country. On the West, I'm asking a team to do quite a leap, and that is North Dakota State. Now, obviously, that's going to get you North Dakota football, right? Viewership, for whatever that's worth. I don't know how many people are in North Dakota. Probably not too many. But in recent years, they have beaten Iowa. They have, beaten some Big Ten and Big 12 teams. So I think they'll definitely be competitive right when they first come in. I'm worried a little bit about the size of their arena. I'm not sure. There's some really big teams in the Big Ten. I would prefer them to have a little bit bigger of a stadium than the Fargo Dome. But hey, it is what it is. I'll put them in the West. They'll be right there with Minnesota and Nebraska and Wisconsin. So I don't know. I think it would be fun. Next, we're going to move into the Big 12, which I'm putting as North and South because that's how it was in the olden days. And it kind of mostly makes sense for the teams I'm putting in, except for one pairing. So this is the only one where I have to actually explain the divisions because all the others are already built in. So in the Big 12 South, I have Baylor, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas, and Texas Tech. So you have that kind of old Big 12 South, and I'm adding Tulane and South Florida, USF. So you get Tulane, you get a good academic school, you get a former SEC member. I know, but still, you get a former SEC member. You get a football team that honestly, it can do better. It can do well. It can grow into a role. If Baylor can do what they did under, the right coach or the right player in the Big 12 and bring in some revenue, I believe Tulane can too. And USF, I believe, is a football program on the rise. Remember, in 2007, they got up to number 2 in the country. So it's not like there's no history there. And that opens up the Florida market a little bit. It gets you into New Orleans a little bit. And maybe some of those Texas teams can maybe get a little bit more of a foothold in there and get some people away from LSU. The Big 12 North is mostly the old Big 8. So you have Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, and West Virginia because they're part of this conference still. This division gets to actually add 4 teams to it. And so remember, we're already in the states of Iowa, Kansas, and West Virginia. We're going to be adding Cincinnati. So that is a natural rivalry with West Virginia and kind of bridges the gap to them. So that's one team that they don't have to travel as far to play, and that is now their new conference rivalry just by proximity. We're adding Colorado State to get the Big 12 back into the state of Colorado a little bit and get Colorado State on even pairing with Colorado as far as funding. Memphis, because it gets them into Tennessee. It's a big market. Memphis lobbied very hard to get in the Big 12 this past year, so we're granting them their wish. And then you kind of get a Memphis, Cincinnati, West Virginia thing going on there, which, it's just nice when you don't have to travel 12 hours to play a team. And then the final Big 12 North team, it doesn't make sense, but I wanted to keep the Oklahoma and the Texas teams together in the South. Therefore, the final Big 12 North team is UCF, Central Florida. So UCF and USF are in different divisions. sorry, I really, really, really wanted to put you together, but I couldn't split up the Oklahoma and Texas schools. I just couldn't do it. So even though you're Central Florida, you're in the north. I'm sorry. It's not a perfect system, all right? There's not a whole lot of teams out there that are viable for some of these conferences. So just let me know how you would do it better down in the comment section. All right, in the Pac-12, we have another splitting up of two teams that I really didn't want to split up. So in the Pac-12 North, to go up against the likes of Washington and Washington State and Oregon and Stanford, I think it's a no-brainer as far as on the football. Academics are a different situation, but on the football field, I have Boise State. They're the most natural piece to go into the Pac-12 North. The second team that I'm adding into the 8-team division is Nevada. So Nevada gets you into the Nevada market. It is the most northern of the two Nevada schools, and I think, they have a built-in rivalry with Boise State, and I think Nevada, like California, would be interesting. In the Pac-12 South, I am putting in BYU. Now, obviously, there's a lot of issues surrounding BYU as far as their ethical code, as far as not wanting to play any games on Sundays, but they are a nationally recognizable football brand. They do have a built-in rivalry with Utah and probably Colorado. That could be a whole mountain thing that they could have going on there. So I did put in BYU, though obviously there would probably be some issues that would need to be ironed out first. The 8th and final team that I'm putting in the Pac-12 South is the UNLV Rebels. Now, I'm putting them in the South. One, they're more southern than Nevada, who's in Reno. I also think that would be a nice destination for a conference game, right? For a conference championship if UNLV wins the South. I think the Pac-12 getting into Nevada, getting into Las Vegas is a good thing, and I think it's something that would really expand their market. I did split up UNLV and Nevada, though I did not want to. Geographically, it makes more sense. Also, they've only played 42 times, which is not as deep of a rivalry as I thought it was, and they've only been playing continuously since the year I was born, in 1989. So it's not as deep-rooted of a rivalry as if you were to split up Auburn and Alabama. So I am going to split them into different divisions, and maybe they can work out a system like the 4 California schools do where they still continue to play every year. Finally, we're going to move to the SEC, and the SEC doesn't need to expand. I still kind of hate the Missouris in the SEC. They don't fit as far as I'm concerned. A&M was a perfect fit. Missouri, maybe a little less so, but when you think about the SEC brand, you think about football and football and football. And if you look at all the teams left, I don't really feel comfortable putting an FCS team, moving them straight into the SEC. I want to expand the market, so no Houston. That's why I moved Memphis into the Big 12. You have to kind of, Ohio, I don't really see any teams. I don't know. It's kind of weird, right? When you think about the South, what really quality football teams are there left to put in the SEC in this scenario? What I'm deciding to do is pick one in the East, one in the West, and those teams are East Carolina in the East and Tulsa in the West. Because under this system, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State stay in the Big 12 forever and ever and ever. And this gets you into Oklahoma a little bit as far as recruiting and expanding the footprint, expanding the SEC brand. And I know that if they could lure away North Carolina or NC State or Virginia Tech from the ACC, the SEC would gladly do that. But that's not going to happen. I thought about App State here. I honestly did. I love the Mountaineers, but East Carolina, they have a longer history in the FBS. I feel like even though App State beat Michigan and is at the top of the Sun Belt every year now, ECU still has a little bit more of a national, a little bit more of a national brand, and they could expand into North Carolina a little bit better than going into the mountains. I don't know. I feel like I'm justifying it now, but for some reason, I feel like ECU fits better with the SEC than App State does. So I'm putting ECU in the East to compete against teams like Kentucky and South Carolina, and then I'm putting in Tennessee, and I'm putting Tulsa in the West to compete against teams like Missouri should be in the West, to compete against teams like Arkansas and Texas A&M. So that's it for me, guys. That is my little cobbled together list of if I could finish conference realignment, how I would do. There is one other video that came out today about conference realignment, so please make sure to check that out in the end card that's about to come up. So there's 2 videos this week on Saturday because I couldn't get around to putting one up because of just personal life stuff. There will also be 2 videos on Tuesday, so definitely make sure to check those out. But thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know down in the comment section what you think about this. Again, it's a little bit of a reach, but I kind of branded June as Conference Realignment Month leading up to kind of a history of conference realignment on July 1st. So that's kind of why I'm doing this. Let me know what you think about this little thought experiment and how you would finish conference realignment with all the Power 5 teams in the same place down below. Thank y'all so much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a big old thumbs up. You can also click the circle right there with the trophy in order to subscribe, or any of the videos over here to the right for more college football content. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, until next time. Should add and why. So again, this is a little bit of a long distance thing. I don't think any of these, first off, none of these are probably going to happen. Second off, this is assuming that every team in each conference stays in their conference. So nobody leaves from the Big 12 to go to the Pac-6, add 2 teams apiece. This is just my take on it, what I'm really interested in, and why I kind of do these videos that, to me, kind of seem ridiculous. Like, I'm just interested in this kind of stuff, and I'll just, like, find myself daydreaming about it while I'm driving or, like, sketching out little lists. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll make a video about it because I want to hear what you guys have to say, who you think each conference get to 16 teams apiece. So in this little thought experiment, I figured I would try to project who, if I was the commissioner of each conference, who I would probably get in order to get 16 teams. So for the Big Ten, they get to add 6 teams, while the Pac-12 adds 4. Big Ten, SEC, and ACC only. Hey lifers, Dustin here, and we are only 11 Saturdays away from the kickoff of the college football season. Really 10 from the first Saturday, but 11 until every single team is playing, and boy, I can't wait. I kind of decided on June as Conference Realignment Month, where every Saturday I would talk about a different issue pertaining to conference realignment, and today is no exception. I figured this is kind of a long-term video. So this is assuming in the next 20 years, we're going to move to super conferences, right? And in the vein of that, I'm assuming that the current Power 5 conferences that we have will all